Hey, ladies. It's like church. Everybody's going to the back row already. Oh, thank you, Bethany. That means I have people to pick on then. The people that sit in the back always get the questions. Whoa, there we go.
Why is it that execution, the ability to deliver on our most strategic
Yeah. Okay. All right, thanks. How you guys doing?
Good.
Adapting all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got cooked pretty well for their weekend. Just follow their team around to see how they knocked out.
Good, good. Yeah.
Young in age, late 30s, early 40s, but yeah,
They get jail kids.
That's good. That's good. Is Louisville going to be one of your cities then?
No.
Oh, okay. But it was just a training?
for us to see how it was.
Yeah, yeah. I went to Chattanooga last year. Yeah. That feels better.
Right. Do you have the You have it on. We have all the way up. Man.
Would it make any difference which track we used?
Why is it?
Test. Test, 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 test.
I think someone broke our microphone.
Yeah, I was doing that before I turned that on. The button's still there.
Check. 1, 2. Check. 1, 2.
So is that the white box? Is that the problem?
Yeah. It's probably the government telling us that box is going to be illegal soon. Which it is, I think.
So we have, thank you.
So do we have a solution between now and next Tuesday for a second?
I'm not worried about Tuesday. Yeah, I'm gonna bring them in tomorrow. Yeah, so I know. If you're gonna be driving, yeah.
Thanks. All right.
When I grind it.
I'd like to go ahead and get us started. Mostly because I want to respect your time, and I know this was a 2-hour block on your schedule. Theoretically, this should take an hour and a half, potentially an hour and 15 minutes. So it'll be somewhere in that range. So I don't want to, it's always good to be done earlier than people expect, but at the same time, if you have questions, I want you to understand this and learn it, because as you guys know, especially being here, some of you just a few weeks, few months, you see these things called wigs, and you're hearing about all this stuff. And so I want to just take time to address questions and help you understand it, because very soon you're going to be heavily involved in your teams and this process. So it's a good place to be starting. And first of all, I want to welcome our people online, Karen and Jeff Coe. Karen Turcotte in Texas, and Jeff Coe, who is probably in his pajamas drinking coffee right now out in California. Lucky you. If I could sit in front of the computer at 7:30 and be in my pajamas drinking coffee, nobody sees me. It's awesome, So welcome them as well. And let me start us off in prayer. Father, thank you for this morning, and we thank you for these processes. We thank you for the opportunity to learn. May this time be a fruitful time. We know that you don't waste time, Lord, that you use all things for good for those who trust in you. And I just pray that during this time would be a time to help us just understand the different things happening in the ministry, and use this to achieve, not for ourselves, but for you, Lord. That our achievements are because of you and through you. And we just look forward to how you use this in each of our lives and as an organization, so that people can know you in a much deeper level than they do today. In Jesus' name, amen. So my name is Gene McCluggage, and I am the Director of Service and Support, which is a fancy term for leading the call center and the ministry advisors currently. And I also lead the WIG Hub and the WIG Coaches team for 4DX. I've been involved in this process since the day one. Back when I was still in HR, I was in the training role, and my leader at the time, Merle Engel, said, "Hey, I'd love to have you be one of the 4DX coaches." And I looked at him and said, "What's 4DX?" Okay, so you guys, most of you are coming in here going, "What's 4DX? What is this?" All right? And I was in the same place. Fortunately for you is that I've learned a lot since then, those 3.5 years ago, of how this whole thing works. And honestly, it's not that hard. Why does it take an hour and a half to talk about something that's really pretty simple? Well, because as human beings, we don't tend to make things simple. We tend to make them very complex because of our unique experiences and who we are. And in the kingdom of God, as fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, we all have our unique talents, gifts that we bring to it, different perspectives, different experiences, and guess what happens? Things don't work as well as we think they should. Okay? So it's a process that I'm going to outline to you. That's all it is. And if you look in the Bible, from A to Z, from Genesis to Revelation, it is a process. We are involved in the process of God. He started with creation, and he ends with the redemption of the universe through Christ. So we're on this journey in history, and God has orchestrated it all and is orchestrating it currently. So as we think about that, processes are part of God's creation, and we have a man-made process that's really nothing new. It's been around for a long time, and we're going to dive into it. I'm not going to get into all the details right now. As we go through the agenda today, here's the 4 things that I'm really going to focus on. The 4 disciplines. What is a WIG and lead? What is a scoreboard, and what's a WIG session? Okay, I'm going to go through each of those with you. And I want to give you a quick history lesson here, and you don't have to write this part down. Like I said, it started back in 2014. We had a major donor donate the whole training to us. I don't have the training box, but everything that I'm showing you today is a CAM presentation. I can make tweaks to it, but I can't change it. It's a proprietary PowerPoint and video, and some of the videos are getting a little dated, but it's easy because it's a canned approach, but I can add my pieces to it now. And so you're going to see my flavor in it, but this is a canned approach that they gave us, and one kit was at that time was about $750. Okay, and then they came in and did 2 days of training for all the leaders, which I was a part of, and we were all trying to grapple with this. And the process itself isn't hard, but like I said, when we started grappling with it, it became very intense. And we came up with a WIG, didn't work. Realized we didn't have the mechanism to measure, to do all the things we needed to make it work. So a new WIG was created for the next year, and that was to increase the number of donors that gave to FamilyLife. We had seen a slide of donors over the years, and they wanted to stop that trend and at least increase. And that first year, we stopped the trend. We stopped the slide. And we saw a slight uptick. Now, we didn't meet quite the goal, but we started seeing an uptick at the end of the year, which was good news. The second year, we kept going. We started running into some issues with it. And I'm not going to get into all the issues, but we started realizing that our momentum had died. And so there was and we were having some technical challenges around it, and so therefore, we didn't see quite the growth. And we were very aggressive in that year. Now, as you guys know, currently, what's the WIG around?
Weekend to Remember and More Current.
Okay, so currently it's Weekend to Remember. You're getting ahead of me, Mark. Okay. You can stop for the next hour or so, okay? All right, so WTR attendance is our goal. And by the way, just some good news. Last year, our goal was about 51,000 in attendance. We hit 57,000 when this was our WIG last year. The process works because we got everybody focused on it, and I'll talk about what that looks like. And we saw 6,000 people, and the good number here is our registrations. Now, we were only measuring attendance because lives don't get changed if they're not there, right? So, but we hit our goal from a registration standpoint. We learned from that, and now our goal is 21,000 in attendance. But if you look on the chart that we keep, not out here, but another chart, our goal is actually 22,000 registrations because we always have a no-show rate. And currently, we're at 21,700 some registrations. We need to hit 22,000 plus to hit our 21,000 WIG goal for the fall. So what has happened? Momentum. We're seeing the momentum from last year carrying into this year. All the things we were doing are carrying into this year. So I just want to give you a little bit of history here to help you understand that this does work. We're seeing progress in this. And it's taken the whole enterprise to get behind it. And that's what the WIG is about. So you got the overview of the 4 disciplines is the next part I'm going to get into. I'm going to rush through this a little bit, but I think you guys can grasp this fairly quickly. All right. So when we're creating these, we have to first step back and say, what is it that gets in our way? And we can control some things. There's some things we can't control, but there's some things we can control. And that's our strategy and how we execute on the strategy. Which is easier, executing on the strategy or creating the strategy?
Executing.
Which is harder? Creating the strategy is always easy. It's the execution of it, because you got to get everybody behind it on a regular basis to execute it consistently, right? I've seen that happen here. I've seen that happen when I was in education. Over and over again, we'd have these great initiatives, this great strategy, but the execution would die after 2 or 3 months. Okay? Why? Any guesses?
Other things came into view that seemed to be more important.
We got distracted. And sometimes that's necessary. Well, we would call that the whirlwind. That's 40X language. So you may have heard that term, whirlwind. Oh, the whirlwind is catching me today. All these things are coming at you. Some people would say putting the fires out. I got all this stuff happening in my life constantly. And it's distracting me from focusing on executing the strategy. Because we still got customers, we still have constituents, we still have people that are calling us on the phone that need something. All of a sudden something breaks, we got to fix it. You know, WTR oriented, we got 10 weekend remembers this weekend, we got 10 containers going out, or Zytex, more than that actually, going to all these weekend remembers. Think of all the logistics. Now, it only takes one ice storm to screw it all up. Okay? And all of a sudden, everybody doesn't care anymore about the strategy. They just care about that moment. And that's life. That's just the way we are. So a lot of times, the whirlwind acts on you, the circumstances around you. But the good thing about our goals is that we can act on them. And this is a strategy to get us there. Okay? So any questions about any of this so far? I mean, for most of us, this is pretty simple. But I don't want to make it sound like you shouldn't ask questions, because then it sounds like, well, if I don't understand it, I'm asking dumb questions. So don't feel that way. All right. So as Doug cues up this next video, the video is just to help us focus on the whirlwind. And it's just Franklin Covey's way of just reminding us of what the whirlwind is in a video sense, okay? So take a minute to watch it, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
For the last few years, Franklin Covey has been fascinated with the topic of execution. We've thought more about it than perhaps anyone on the planet. We've asked ourselves, why is it that execution, the ability to deliver on our most strategic goals and priorities, ultimately breaks down in so many organizations? You probably won't be surprised to know that organizations that execute well do 4 things very consistently. First of all, the people actually know the goals of the organization. Second, they know what to do to achieve the goals. Third, they know how they are doing against the measures of the goals. And fourth, there's clear accountability for results. We don't want to be oversimplistic here, but ultimately, the ability to execute is summed up in these 4 attributes. So here is the really puzzling question. Why is something as obvious as these attributes and so obviously important so rare? The problem arises from an inherent conflict between 2 forces. The first is the enormous amount of energy required to maintain the business, just to keep the doors open, what we call the whirlwind of the day-to-day. The second is the energy required to drive the goals for improving performance. There's friction between these two. There is always friction. Now, you might think at first that these are the same forces, but they're not. The whirlwind is all the work that's done every day just to keep things going. Think of it this way. Would people in our organization be busy even if we didn't have any goals for moving the organization forward? Yes. The whirlwind is all about the urgent. It comes at you. It demands immediate attention. And there are usually immediate consequences if you ignore it. Just don't respond to email or voicemail for a couple of days and see how interesting your life gets. As a matter of fact, I'm guessing you're feeling its pull right now. You're probably thinking, this is interesting stuff, but I got a lot of work I got to get back to. An organization's top goals, on the other hand, those have to do with what's ultimately most important, but often lack the same feeling of urgency. You have to carve out time for these things or they don't happen. The problem is, with most people, urgency trumps importance. A client of ours from a Fortune 50 company put it this way. She said, you know what gets us around here? We don't have these giant dragons swooping down, knocking us off our priorities. What we have are gnats. Every day with the gnats in our eyes, distracting us. And when we look back over the last 6 months, we haven't done any of the important things we said we were going to do. Think of the last major strategy or initiative that you saw fall by the wayside. What killed it? Did it starve? Did people have to get back to what they considered the real work? If the answer is yes, then you have experienced what most organizations experience: the top priority or a goal suffocated by the whirlwind. Here's the bottom line. The real execution challenge is not simply achieving a goal. Your organization is filled with accomplished people who know how to achieve a goal. The real execution challenge is executing a goal in the midst of the whirlwind.
There we go. Sorry out there. Most of us come into something like this going, oh, it's required, I'll just get it done, and I'm just going to sit here, take the beating, and then get back to my real job, right? I get that. I was a school teacher for 15 years. I understand motivation. I understand where people are. Some days they're more interested than others. As he said in the video, how many things do you have going on in your life right now, and you're thinking, I could be getting this done right now? It's reality. But that reality is what distracts us from accomplishing some things at the same time, the bigger goals. And one of the things that the ELT has done is given us 4 goals for this year, and that's what we're supposed to work toward. Now, we still all have our day-to-day, the little things that are always happening that distract us, the urgent or the important. And that's where this process comes in. We're going to dive into it here. As we get into the first discipline, research has said that if you have 2 or 3 goals, you're going to accomplish 2 or 3 goals with excellence. There's a key word, with excellence. Okay? Excellence is the key. So if I have 4 to 10, how many do you think I'm going to accomplish? There's that point. You could accomplish 4 to 10, but it's probably not going to be with excellence. More than likely, you're only going to accomplish 1 to 2. So let's take a guess with 11 to 20. Zero. Why? Why is it that the more goals we have, the less we accomplish?
You're overwhelmed by how many you have.
Where's your focus? Pick a focus. Okay? I mean, we do this in our personal life. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get on exercise. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I got like 6 or 7 goals for the new year. And we typically don't accomplish very many of them, even if it's 1. And there's different reasons for that, and we're going to talk about that. And so this process helps us stay in this realm of 2 to 3. Currently, we have 4 as an organization. You know, we can wrestle around that. One of them is critical for the future. And so therefore, it's a big deal in terms of this ministry and helping us work with our constituents, and that's the data management, which most of us probably get kind of, what's that? We start yawning because it's not exciting, but it's necessary. It's really important. They wouldn't have put it at that level if it wasn't for the future of family life in terms of how we interact with people. So we got these 4 goals that we're working on as an organization, and one of those is focused on the WIG. Right now, it's the Weekend to Remember. Okay? Eventually, as Mark already said, we're going to be focused on the Art of Parenting, or the Parenting Initiative, and that's going to be the new enterprise WIG, and I'll get there in a second. So knowing that, a WIG is a wildly important goal. It's not a pig. It's not pretty important goal. Okay? It's a wildly important goal. Now, why do they use that language? Obviously, if it's wildly important, that means that everything we do needs to be focused on accomplishing that goal. Okay? Now, it's not a 40-hour-a-week deal, though, for each of us, and we'll get into that. So as we look at the enterprise WIG, each of your teams comes up with a WIG that feeds the enterprise WIG. So currently, it's about WTR attendance. So one of the teams, the planners, were going, how do we affect attendance? Our job is about taking care of the constituent at the Weekend to Remember, making sure the ballroom's set up, making sure the hotel's doing what they're supposed to do based on the contract. They're running the sound, they're running all the video, they're doing all that behind the scenes that makes the whole weekend experience good for the constituent there, right? So how do they affect attendance? So they started looking at it, and then one of their goals became, or their WIG became, we're going to invite hotel staff, which they'd have done before, but they got intentional about it. They went from the year before, I think they had 4 hotel employees that they invited to a Weekend to Remember attend. Last year, they had 30-some, 36 or 38. All right? So did they work? Yeah. Now, did it dramatically give this huge lift? No, but they were intentional, and that intentionality, 30-some people now had the experience of the Weekend to Remember, and they were impacted all because they just invited. But they were intentional about it. My team, the advisors, their goal is to recruit group coordinators. So when they're talking to people who are interested in doing something with the ministry, and they're talking to them, and as they're in the discovery mode, they discover that the person really wants to volunteer. So guess what? They go to the rep and say, here's a volunteer. Or they find out, oh man, I love the Weekend to Remember so much. There's like 5 people that I was thinking about. I'd love to just get them there next time. Well, why don't you become a GC, a group coordinator? All right, and their goal is to recruit group coordinators and then hand them off to the rep, with the idea that a group coordinator brings in up to 5 couples, kind of on an average, 4 to 5, and so therefore we're impacting the attendance. So we have these different WIGs that play into the enterprise WIG. So our goal for the advisors, I think, for this fall is like 900 attendees out of all the GCs we recruit. That's the goal. However, we can't. That's harder to track, so we can only track the GCs that we're recruiting. But it should all play into the enterprise WIG. Service specialists the same way. The planners, go down the list. Okay? And it keeps going. And we also will call a wildly important goal a lag measure. And this is where people start to get a little bit confused is when I use the word lag measure, and I'll define it here in a second, so don't get too worked up about it. A WIG is a lag. Okay, we're calling, and there's a reason for that, and you'll see here in a minute. When we write our WIGs, it's an X to Y by when. So what's the current WTR? What's the starting value for the fall? 0. What's our final value? 21,000 in attendance. We define it a little bit. And what's the date? December 31st, or, we can fudge that a little bit, December 15th, and that's after the last Weekend to Remember for the fall. So why do we get this specific? It has to be measurable. If we can't measure it, what's the point? Okay? We don't know if we're winning. So the wildly important goal is what guides us and helps us stay focused, because if we as a group know what the goal is, as an enterprise, we're more likely to achieve it. Organizations where they don't know what the goals are tend not to achieve it. Okay? So let's watch this quick video here on It's Wildly Important. It's a couple minutes long. It just gets to the point of understanding the WIG.
Hello.
Hey.
Dude,
How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
Fantastic.
My name's Greg. I'm a background investigator / criminal investigator.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Thierry et je suis le chef exécutif.
Hi, my name is Marcia and I'm the aquatics director.
Hi, I'm Sandy. I'm a trainer.
My name is Quentin and I drive a forklift.
Steven, Steve, either way, just don't call me anything ugly.
Me llamo Jorge y trabajo para el Departamento de Obras Públicas.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm a senior resource specialist.
My name is Jim. I'm president of the holding company.
I'm Jim, and I'm the president of a construction company.
I'm Jim. I'm the CEO.
I'm the director of rooms at this resort.
I'm a project manager.
I'm Dawn, and I'm the CLO. That's Chief Learning Officer.
I am really the CEO.
I do the salad bar.
At least for this year.
I'm a facilitator, senior branch manager.
Vice president.
I nurse the nurses.
I'm kind of like a cruise director for a city in the desert.
I am very engaged in my job.
I'm pretty engaged.
What causes me to disengage is if I don't sense a greater purpose in what I'm doing.
We certainly have some people who are more engaged than others.
I think it would really help if I knew what my company's top goal was.
What's our most important goal?
The most important goal?
He doesn't know.
You'd have to ask my boss.
At this time, I'm not too sure. Well, I couldn't tell you exactly what it is.
Top goal.
Oh, what was Deanna's?
Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I can't think of one.
I wish I knew.
Communication. That was a good one, communication.
I'm quite sure she does have a goal for us.
Yeah, we'll go with communication.
I'm just not sure what it is.
Safety in the pool area at all times.
I just totally lost my train of thought.
Our main goal is to service our stores.
You got to think what your opponent's got to do. You got to be able to counteract to that. And, you know, just be smart.
Spread a little love. Make a difference in people's lives through excellent patient care.
I think it's very important to narrow the goals down to one or two.
Business is too complex. There is no one goal.
There are plenty of goals out there, but we do get sent off on some goose chases, I guess, if you will.
Sometimes I think the management has different goals.
My boss's most important goal changes a lot.
You know what the boss's goal is?
By and large, our goals come from corporate in Germany.
If I were running the company, I would choose a different goal.
Nuestra meta más importante es poder servir a la comunidad.
We need to make one more sale before year end.
Sometimes making it through the day is my most important goal.
The most important goal we have as a team is that we will reach the 80th percentile in patient satisfaction.
Do they know that?
Yes.
I hope so. They know exactly.
Everybody here knows that goal, and I challenge you to go try to find somebody that doesn't.
Faster, cheaper, and better.
Faster, cheaper, better.
Faster, cheaper, and better.
All the people on our team know what the #1 goal is.
Certain people on our team know that. Do they all know it, understand it? No, they don't.
How do I know that's the goal?
Because we talk about it all the time.
ESP.
Mind meld.
We talk about it every day.
I think it's been stated.
No, it is not clearly stated.
It's not written down anywhere. We just discuss it in that type of format.
If it was told to me, it probably went in it one ear, not the other.
We haven't had a meeting on it.
If I saw it on paper, then I probably know.
How much time do I spend on the top goal? Not that much time, maybe an hour every 2 weeks.
Probably somewhere around, 15, 20 minutes a day.
About 2 minutes.
Do you want a percentage?
Closer to about 20 to 30%.
99.9%.
Maybe 80%?
The other 0.1%, I just think about it.
65% of my planned day.
5%.
I spend the rest of my time doing administration.
The rest is putting out fires.
How do we know we're accomplishing that?
Do I measure my goals?
We haven't quite figured out how to measure our internal goals yet.
You mean we're supposed to keep track?
Reportamos al supervisor lo que hicimos y todo sale correcto según él.
Customer feedback is like gold around here.
I hate feedback.
Feedback is very important, positive or negative. I know I've done a good job when there's no feedback.
No feedback at all. That's the worst.
None.
If we don't hear anything, we know it's not being used.
I know I did a good job if the dessert tray is empty.
Never got beaten up too bad, so that's a starting point.
It's hard to measure how much people are trying.
It's very hard to see how we're doing.
Our team needs a scoreboard.
I want a scoreboard.
Now, why would I want that?
Measurement's imperative.
I don't think we have a way to measure for doing better than last year.
They say that we're going to do it, but it never happens.
But we know it's important.
I feel it. I just know when I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, let me know how that goes.
It's as simple as having a goal.
So we choose the most important.
A wildly important one.
Pardon?
We choose wildly important goals.
A wildly important goal?
Wildly?
Huh?
Wildly
Important?
Goal?
I don't understand what you mean.
We call them wigs.
Wildly important goals?
Wild.
Why wildly?
They are not only important, they're wildly important.
That would be a good idea.
So I think one or two of you could relate to at least one or two of those folks in there. I know I could. The guy who sounds like Rocky Balboa, give Jerry Busey a hard time, because I was like, I think that was Jerry in his younger years. So I can say that now. I have enough equity with him. So
before you got beaten up.
That's right. That's right. Going back to the wig, one thing I want to highlight real quick is, in a wig, your team has to own 80% of it or more. Why is that important? So let me give you an example. The planners, their wig was to invite people, invite hotel employees. Can they control that? Yeah. It's 100% in their control as a team. However, there's some wigs that, you start going, well, some of it's a little dependent upon our measurement system. And we're not sure if it's working or not. And we had this happen last year. As we were developing the wig, we couldn't track certain things. So we weren't sure if certain people were winning or losing. And then some of it, we create wigs that, yeah, we do our part, but we got to depend on another team to do their part. Therefore, well, we don't own as much of it. So it has to be something that the team owns, 80% or more of. Yeah, there's always going to be somebody who's going to impact it, somebody who's going to get in the way of it, somebody who's going to help it along outside of your team. All right? But all of this flows together. If everybody's doing their part, we're going to see growth, and we have in the past. So, lead measures. So we keep talking about these things called lag measures or WIGs, and these are the lag is the goal, but the leads is how we're going to get there. These are the activities. For those of you who are RO staff, if you hadn't done certain activities like make phone calls, have appointments, and ask for referrals, would you have gotten here? Would you have raised the dollar amount that you need? Absolutely not. Okay? So there's the lead measures. If you do these three things really well, you're going to hit your goal at some point. Now, in a ministry, we also don't want to, I don't want to neglect one thing, and that's the result really is up to God in a lot of what we do. But at the same time, He works through us, so He's working through those processes to get us to do what He's called us to do. And so our activities, our behaviors drive the WIG. They drive that lag measure. So let's give an example here. Well, it's the what and the how. So the lag measures the goal. The lead measures something that gets us to the goal. I like to say it's a measurement of our activity. So it has to be predictive and it has to be influenceable. It's something that predicts that we'll hit the lag or the WIG, and it's something that we can influence. All right? So when it was the donor WIG, the call center's job was to ask for a donation, but they didn't ask for a donation on every call. They asked for a donation on product transactions. So if somebody called in and said, I'd like to order the Art of Marriage. Great. Would you like to add $10? Or would you like to add a donation on top of your purchase? It was that simple. But we could measure it, we could track it, and see how they did. And we weren't sure if it was going to work, but we thought, well, it's predictive. If we ask people, somebody's going to give. We just didn't know how much. And is it influenceable? Yeah, we can influence it. We can ask. As long as we're consistent in the ask, we can get there. In that first year, we raised about $55,000 or $60,000 by asking. And that was all we did. Every time somebody called in and wanted to order a product, that's all we did. Okay? So let's get one that's a little closer to home. Losing weight. I have this desire to lose, say, 10 pounds by the end of December. Okay? So I want to go from my current weight down 10 pounds, so that's my X to Y, by the end of December. So I have a clear-cut goal. I know where I want to get to. Now, does that mean I'm going to lose it? No, not at all. But what are the two leads that would be both predictive and influenceable that will get me to my goal? Diet and exercise. So I say I'm going to limit my calorie intake to 2,100 calories a day, and then I'm going to run 20 miles or 12 miles a week. Does that guarantee I'm going to hit my goal? No. But is it predictive? Yes. Is it influenceable? Can I do something about it? Yeah, I own it. I own what goes in my mouth, right? I own whether I get out there and exercise. Now, if my behaviors don't meet the activity that I've defined, I won't get there. All right, so there's another piece to this, and that's why this is 4 disciplines. Okay, right now we're walking through understanding the lag and lead. Another one is improving grades, improving your math grade from X to Y by end of December. And the lead measures review homework activity 5 times for completion and accuracy. Are there behaviors in each of these that aren't mentioned? Yeah, there are behaviors here that we have to define. Like, for instance, the donor ask the service specialists are doing. Would you like to give a donation on top of your product purchase? Not really. Okay. So, or, hey, would you want to pony up some money? Okay, are we doing it? Yeah, but there's a behavior of quality that has to be with it to get us there. Okay, it can't just be we do it and say, well, it didn't work. There's a quality measurement that has to be behind that, and that tends to be the softer, more the qualitative part of all of this. So this video quickly just goes through lead measures and helping you understand. It's just reinforcing what I just mentioned, and I'll let Doug get us there.
Or when they feel they cannot influence the score. These are the same reasons a child would disengage from a game. The second discipline, Act on the Lead Measures, addresses this issue head on. After a goal is set by a team, it usually doesn't take very long for the members to feel a disconnect between their day-to-day work and the stated goal. As a matter of fact, in many cases, it won't take long for the members of the team to forget about the goal completely. To maintain focus on the goal, the members of a team have to know whether they are winning or losing and know that they can influence the score. It needs to feel at least a little like a game. The key to this begins with understanding the difference between lag and lead measures. Most organizations have an abundance of lag measures. These are the kind that come right off the computer at you. And make no mistake about it, they are very important. They measure goal achievement, but they are difficult to influence. For instance, a very successful construction company selected safety as its wildly important goal. Every time they had an incident, it meant that people got hurt. The fact that their insurance rates continued to climb wasn't good for business either. The lag measure came right off the computer to them. Every week, it was the incident report. But here's where the trouble with lag measures begins. It usually doesn't feel like we have a lot of influence over them because we get them after the fact. It's done, it's history. And good or bad, it tells you the result. The lead measure, on the other hand, is different. It's an activity that we bet is the most predictive of achieving the goal. Because they are often behavioral, they are easier to influence. Lag measures measure goal achievement and are difficult to influence. Lead measures are predictive of goal achievement and are easier to influence. When the construction company started looking at lead measures for safety, they had to ask themselves what they could measure that would be predictive of lower incident rates, but would also be more influenceable. They thought about measuring hours of overtime or training hours, and then they asked what were the main reasons that safety violations happened. And it became obvious that there was one main reason that people were getting hurt. They weren't consistently wearing their safety gear or following safety standards. Eventually, they settled on measuring compliance to the 8 safety standards that they had determined were behind most accidents. These included wearing hard hats in unbelievably hot weather, the correct gloves, proper shoes, safety goggles, and braces on the side of the roof to keep things from sliding off. Now, when they began measuring these things, the scores varied greatly from crew to crew. The foremen of the lower scoring crews reacted immediately to these measures. Not only did the safety standard compliance improve, but it had a dramatic impact on incident rate. giving them one of the best safety records in the company's history. The lead measure of safety standard compliance turned out to meet both criteria. It was predictive and influenceable. But there is some bad news when it comes to lead measures. Lead measures are usually tricky to measure. They're usually not obvious to identify, and it usually takes some work to go and get them. Think about how the construction company got their lead measures. Foremen had to take turns once a week to audit the safety standards of other crews. Do you think they were excited about that? Why did they do it? Because it was the wildly important goal. If it had been one of a dozen initiatives, it would have been a very different story. This is why it is so important in Discipline 1 to narrow the focus before even getting to Discipline 2 and identifying the lead measures. Lead measures connect the real work, the stuff we can influence, to the goal. Here's the unique chance for you and your team to fundamentally change your mindset. Instead of trying to manage the unmanageable lag measures, act on the lead measures.
So let's do one more example. Basketball game. Team wins, that's a lag measure. Okay? What is the leads that get them there? Practice, fundamentals, whatever you define as the leads gets them there, right? So does that mean the losing team didn't do those things? Not necessarily, but sometimes it's more of an execution than anything. But it's predictive and influenceable. Every team out there, doesn't matter who you are, if you want to get better at something, you practice it, you get good coaching, and sometimes you're going to be more successful than others. But you're going to, at least we know those are predictive and influenceable, right? They get us to a particular goal. They may not hit the goal 100%, but we get us there. Whereas the lag, the score, you can't do anything about it. It's done, right? All we can do is take that and say, okay, what can we do differently to predict and influence the outcome of the next game? Same thing in the business world. You know, at the end of a fiscal year, we have X amount of money. Now, if you're in the business world, you're looking at, did we make money? Well, you can't do anything about it at the end of the year, can you? It's a lag. But what can you do to influence it to increase the goal? Those are the leads. Okay, so I just want to make sure that's clear. And it's a bet. Every one of these is a bet. We think these are going to happen. And typically your leads are the ones that you think are going to be the best ones. Okay, so on a scale of 10, you say, well, I think this is a 7 or an 8. And you have another lead, you're going, well, that's a 3 or a 4. Well, by themselves, maybe that's true. What if you combined them and you're doing both of them? Maybe it raises the score, maybe it doesn't. It's a bet. And we're going to talk about how do we know that here a little bit. But if it's not measurable, if we can't measure the leads, then it's useless because it doesn't tell us if we're doing anything right. If our activity isn't helping us. It's kind of like when I'm doing MPD. If I make X number of phone calls, I should get these number of appointments. Statistically, I should have these things happen. If they're not, then I have to start asking, well, is it a quality issue? Is it, what's going on? And those are the things that we have to look at as we go through this process. So, how do you know if a team is winning or losing? Well, let's get into measurement. Go out to a park. Outdoor basketball is good. Maybe it's a little cool today, but or even in a gym, and you're watching a pickup game. But you can't hear them. All you can do is see them. How do you know if they're playing a real game versus playing just, they're just out there having a good time, just shooting around? Okay, maybe they're shooting free throws. What other body language, what other things are you going to know that's going to tell a celebration or anger or the range of emotions? What else do you know that shows that they're playing to win?
Formality in regards to one team.
Yeah, the formality of it. You got, if you got 10 men out there playing 5-on-5, you see the intensity. You see that maybe they're moving the ball around. I mean, they're really going for that basket. Now, contrast that to, a few guys out there just kind kind of playing, but not really playing that hard. How do you know? Well, one, they're not playing that hard. But they're kind of, you know, and they start laughing, and they missed one. You know, somebody shoots an air ball. Yeah, half-court shots, or they shoot an air ball, everybody starts laughing. In a real game, what's happening? You shoot an air ball, oh, you know, they're mad. Yeah, that's right. So we have, and then that's how you know based on the behaviors that are happening. They're keeping score. That's how they know if they're winning or losing. And that's why measurement is so important. If we're not measuring, we can't know if we're winning or losing. Okay? And in our realm, the things we get to do day to day is more about the kingdom of God winning than anything. And so we got to keep that in perspective. But this process gets us there. So people do play differently when they keep score. If you've ever been flipping through the TV, and this tends to be more of a man thing than a woman thing, so I apologize for the analogy, but since I'm a man, I'm going to use it anyway. If I'm flipping through TV and I see a sports event, and I may not even know what it is, you know, cricket. And I look at it, and I'm like, ooh, look at the score. It's tied. Ooh, this is kind of interesting. So I'll stop and watch. If the score hadn't been there, would I have stopped and watched? Probably not. Or pick a basketball game. It may be two no-name teams I've never heard about, but I flip and, ooh, it's in overtime, and they're tied still. I'm going to watch this. I have no idea who they are. I don't care. The score was there, so it made it interesting. I want to see who wins. Take the score away, it's just another basketball game. So the score does matter to us. We want to see the outcome. We want to see how people are going to do. And so the lead and lags, if we're measuring those, helps us know how to play the game and how to play it better. So as they say here in 40X, you play differently when you're keeping score. Why do we have CMOs? Especially if they're measurable ones, we tend to want to know how we're doing compared to those. And so at the end of the year, we want to compare our results to what we were supposed to do. Okay? We want to know if we're winning. So get into the scoring part of it. You always have the wildly important goal, your lag, and your lead measures. And that's the game. That's the teams. That's what the team is about, winning. And so how do you do that? How do you know if you're winning or losing? You have to have a scoreboard. You have to. So you basically have your WIG, and you map it out. So we want to go from 0 to 21,000. So if you look at our WIG board out there, it goes up straight. It's not a straight line. It goes up and down based on the season. And that's our WIG of knowing how we're doing as an enterprise. If you go around to some of the other places in the building, such as over by the planners, or they don't have any measurements yet because they've just started the season. But if you look at the reps, those are the ones I see regularly. You can see how they're doing. Okay? The lead measures are on there. How are we doing? Are we fulfilling what we're supposed to be doing? Are we asking? If I'm a planner, am I asking? If it's a service specialist, are they offering opportunities for people to attend the weekend to remember? Are they doing the things they're supposed to be doing? We measure that, and we see how we're doing as a team. And then we compare that to what the lag is, the measurement. Okay? Whatever goal we've set for the team. And by the way, you typically have 2 lead measures. You could have 3. Some teams have 1. And there's various reasons for that, and I don't want to bore you with the details in that, but there is some flexibility with this. So compelling scoreboard. When I look at that scoreboard, and it's a little bit hard to see on here, can you tell if we're winning or losing? In 5 seconds or less, when you look at that, are we winning or losing? Okay, so here's the line. This is where we're supposed to be. We're in the red. If it hits the line or above, we're in the green. So currently we're losing. All right? This is a week old, and Marcus had already filled the board out. We're actually in the yellow right here. We're about 400 lives off of where we should be, we want to be. And guess what? Delray, by the way, got canceled because of this funny thing called a hurricane. Okay? That was over 400 lives that would have been there. You add that, we would be right at the goal. We'd be where we predicted we'd be. So we're not far behind it. And we got 10 this weekend, so I expect after this weekend we'll be in the green. All right? So once you understand the excuse me, the scoreboard, you can now look at it in 5 seconds or less. Yeah, we're losing. But we're winning. Okay? Just like when you walk into a gym and the score is up there. Oh, they're losing. Oh, they're winning. Okay? It needs to be simple. Pretty simple. It's just a graph. Highly visible. Can you guys all walk by the one down here and see it? Yeah? If you walk around the ministry, you should be able to see them. It should be highly visible. And it tells us if we're winning or losing in 5 seconds or less. Here's the planner one. You can look at it again. They haven't plotted it out, and it looks red, but it's, no, I think it is red. The guy who put it together, he didn't realize that should have been black because we use red and green to indicate if we're winning or losing. But, oh, maybe that is right. I don't know. I don't work with them anymore, so I haven't kept track. So here's your leads. Here's the graph of the WIG. And they did something kind of fun. Here on top of these, if you walk by, these are the weekend remembers. So you have each of the weekend remembers, and then they put the statistics in there, attendance and salvations, just for them to keep focused on why we do what we do. Okay? But it's just kind of a fun way for them to express the weekend to remember there. Yeah, this was last year's FY17. This is a real fun video. It gives you an idea of my kind of humor, so that might scare some of you. Maybe some of you will come alongside me. But this is a really good way of measuring. It's a verbal measurement, and we'll show you here. They immediately knew they were winning or losing, right? And that was from Australia, so that also tells us about their humor down there. So if you notice an accent, that's where it's from. All right, so moving on, you've seen the scoreboards. They're necessary to help us keep track of how we're doing, so the whole team can visibly see, are we winning or losing, how are we doing in our leads as a team. Okay? Now, the next discipline here is accountability. All this other doesn't matter unless this is there. So go back to the weight loss example. If you're working out with somebody, are you more likely to show up? I know that's true for me. I've gone upstairs, and there's a group of us at noon that usually go work out, and get up there, and there's nobody there. All of a sudden, my workout, my intensity goes down, and, oh, I'm tired. I'm going to stop early. But somebody's there. No, I'm not going to do that, because I don't want to look bad. Okay? And so the accountability is there. And so for a lot of us, we got to keep ourselves accountable. Each other accountable within our teams, and your leaders have to keep you accountable to hitting the goals and doing the best we can. And that's why you hear us talking about the WIG regularly. You've seen me up front talking about the WIG, giving updates. We want to keep it in front of people. This is important. And we want to show if we're winning or losing and what we can do to win. And so we get into this cadence of accountability, they call it. How many of you have participated in a WIG session? Okay, a handful of you. Some of you, I know, haven't started doing them. Some of you are doing them. It just depends on your teams. My service specialists will start doing them again, but we don't call them WIG sessions. We call them WIG huddles. And there's a difference, all right? Typically, your leaders are going to do WIG sessions. So when I'm in my leadership meeting with my team, I report to Mike Fenley. So when we're sitting in there once a week, we give commitments. Okay? A commitment is my team, my advisors, and we just did this. We have a few advisors who really aren't recruiting very many GCs, and we have some who are recruiting a lot. And so we need to make sure that they understand the importance of this to us, so we did a training. So my commitment was to make sure a training was executed on how to recruit GCs. And it was a reminder training, not a training of how to do it, just a reminder training. But it was important because there's two things there from my perspective. One is we're not going to hit our goal if people aren't doing their part in this. And then two, just to remind them that this is important. These are lives that are going to be impacted at the weekend to remember. And all they have to do is ask that person. If they get that person to invite a few people, more lives are impacted. So we got to think that way. Yeah, Marcus. Yes.
So, I'm not asking in a sarcastic level, but are we wasting, like, time from the support standpoint of trying to come up with big goals for, like, a weekend to remember?
Since I've been in this seat, we've been debating that all the way through. Should a support team have a support goal that supports the WIG? Should all the teams be participating in getting people to a weekend to remember? That's been the debate. And it came down and says, last year, everybody needs to participate in inviting people to a weekend to remember. And then team was instructed to come up with a WIG. And for some teams, it was harder than others. But out of that came some creativity, too. Chad Donnelly's team said, you know what? All we can do is invite our supporters. And he said, you know what, I work with a lot of vendors. So what they did is they committed an hour a week to talk to all the vendors that they work with, and they had a list, and they worked through that list to talk to them about the weekend to remember and encourage them to get in the corporate sponsorship program or, invite them personally to go, however it was working. And that was what their WIG was. Now, how successful was that? They got some people to go, but long term, maybe it has a longer tail than just that one call or those two calls because it's getting people familiar with it. It's exposing them to it. So some creativity came out. That never would have happened if the mandate hadn't come down. After a few months, it became obvious that some teams were struggling more than others in terms of how to execute on that because we couldn't measure it for them. And that's where we started to struggle. And that's why you keep hearing me say we got to be able to measure it. And those are some of the struggles. So then it becomes, do we do a support goal? And so those are some of the debates and arguments at the leadership level that we've had for a long time. If you talk to other companies that are doing this, they've had the same battle. In our trainings, it's not going to be in this video series, they did a thing with Marriott. And Marriott took on the 4DX model corporately. So at that time, I don't know if they're still doing it, I should be able to walk into a Marriott, walk up to the employee and say, so what's your wildly important goal? And we actually had a few of our people who were staying in Marriotts at some of the ballrooms ask them, oh, you know about that? Yeah. And they got excited and they said, oh, come back here. You need to see our scoreboards. Well, one of the things that Marriott did was, how do the house cleaning staff that clean the rooms, how do they help us with revenue? Because their goal was revenue. Okay? How do they help drive revenue? That's pretty difficult. So what their teams came up with was every time they clean a room, they're going to find one thing that is wrong in the room and put a work order in for it. So it could be, there's a little bit of caulking came out of the tile next to the tub. Maybe that's it. Maybe they check the phone's not working. Whatever the case may be, and then they have a board and they would go in and say, put how many times they found something on their board, and they're measured by that. And what they were finding was, or the thought was, well, any guesses what the thought would be behind that? How is that going to help them impact their revenue?
Just a better experience.
Yeah, better experience. I walk into a room and it's immaculate, everything looks right, everything's working. Am I more likely as a customer want to come back to that? Yeah, absolutely. So it would impact the long term. So to answer your question, in that case, it was all about revenue, but they didn't play a real strict role in that. They were more of an expense, a necessary expense to the organization. So that's the role they could play. So there is a tension in this of where, who, and why, and all those things of how to do this. And it's been going on since we first started, and it's never going to be resolved. It's just something that we're going to have to live with, knowing there's that tension. Yeah. I'm sure it did. They didn't give that example of how they measured in the customer side of it. Maybe they did, but that was like 4 years ago, so I don't remember particulars. But it's a good question. But it was something we could do to measure to see satisfaction. And we do that with a Weekend to Remember experience. We do measure satisfaction of the experience, right? We have a 9.3 out of 10 for when people check out the boxes on the evaluations. So we do measure things like that. But leadership has made some different calls in the past. And so this time last year, or a year and a half ago, when we came up with the WTR attendance WIG, it was just said, you know, this time we're going to try to get everybody behind it, 100% and inviting. Before that, it was support roles were, how do I support donor? What can I do to help donor? Okay. Service specialist is kind of obvious for us. That was fairly easy, which was, we were lucky for us. The next WIG with Art of Parenting may not be so obvious for different teams. Some teams it's going to be more obvious than others. The advisors, very obvious, because guess what they get to do? Promote, 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 talk to people about doing Art of Parenting and attending like arrows. Okay? So for others, it's not so obvious. What's HR going to do? Hard question to answer. Should they be inviting people, or should they have a support WIG? So those are some of the things that are got to be figured out in the next few months. So it's a good question I want to address. I'm not going to hide anything from you. It's not easy. This is where the human complexity gets in the way of a simple process. So going back to accountability, we have WIG sessions. And going back to my example, each week I go into my meeting, we pull up, we have this thing called My40X. Some teams use it better than others. My team uses it every week. We enter our commitments. So my commitment, and it's usually 1 or 2, was to do the training. We executed the training. I fulfilled my commitment. Why is that important? Because I think that's going to move us forward in getting things done in terms of the WIG. Okay? So I review the last weeks. We look at the scoreboard. Hey, we're winning, we're losing, da-da-da-da-da. What can I be doing instead to get us to be on the winning side? What is it that my team could, what part can they be playing that we haven't identified yet? Are they doing their leads? Are they accomplishing the things we're asking them to? On the WIG huddle side, this is the teams that are doing the same thing over and over and over again. So service specialists are asking for a donation on every product transaction. I don't need a commitment, but I do need to discuss it. So how are you guys doing with that? Well, and when we were doing the donor one, we actually had a board, and everybody had to put the number of times they asked up there because they had a percentage goal they had to hit. Is that a little more motivating? When I'm comparing myself to somebody else on my team, and I got this big 0, this red 0 on there, and somebody else has the, 5 invites or 5 whatever, green. It's just that human nature. It's built-in accountability. So as we're talking about it each week, it's just 5 minutes. Hey, how are we doing with this? Well, I found that when I ask this way, I'm getting a better return. Oh, okay, so it's a best practice we share. Whatever it is, but it's the same thing over and over and over again. And different teams in the building are a WIG huddle. Some are WIG sessions. And like I said, the WIG sessions tend to be leaders. This tends to be the leader in the team. Okay, are you executing upon the things you're supposed to be every day? It sounds simple. It's a little more complex than that because there's some nuances here, but that's the general rule. So we get in that WIG session each week during our team meeting. First thing we do is 4DX. Well, first thing we do is devotion, and then the second thing we do is 4DX. Okay? We report, we update, we make commitments. So I'm always thinking about what's the 1 or 2 things I need to be doing that are most important to helping the WIG. So how much time does this all take? Well, to first of all execute it, you got to put it on your calendar. So if I have a commitment, typically I'm executing upon that, and I have to put it on my calendar. Okay? So maybe it's going to take me 2 hours to execute one commitment. Maybe I need to have a meeting, and then I need to do an action step after that meeting to get it done. Okay? Sometimes a second commitment may be real quick. Maybe it's something simple, but it's just taking some time to do it. How much time are you supposed to take to accomplish your WIG commitment, especially in the leadership realm? 5 to 10% of your time. So if you dedicate an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 or 4 hours, depending on what your commitment is, that's what you say, that is the most important thing I can do in this next week. And you give yourself 5 to 10% of your time is going to be against that. How much time did I say? 5 to 10? It's not 100%. It's not everything you do is about the WIG. Because going back to Marcus's point, if I am in HR, I can't give 100% of my time to the WIG. That's ridiculous. However, if I'm like the Johnsons and I'm in rep world, 100% of what I do is getting people the weekend to remember, right? Okay? So that is their job. That's never going to change for them. So their commitments might be something outside of their normal realm. That I'm going to try to do X, Y, or Z to see if I can increase a better return in terms of our coaching calls, or whatever the case may be. All right, before we move on to this last session, or last part here, any questions? Marcus asked a really good question. Any other follow-up questions or any comments? All right, so this is a longer video that encompasses everything we just talked about. It's going to show the whole process, and it's a real-world example. See if you can guess which company this is. That's they're going to show in the video here. I think I need more than that.
Is there a place that has real-time information on how we're tracking the WIG, like on the wall or one place online?
Yeah. My40X is the system we're using, and I can show you how to use it. For any of you who are in a management position, I'll get you in touch with your coach, and you can talk to them about My40X, and they can use it. Mark, you're probably, Jeffrey, you may want to tag on to what Mark's doing. We just have to keep our number of people on there down so we don't keep, from a license perspective, keep our costs down. Yes, sir. Pen? It's like I'm teaching again. I'm teasing. By the way, I just find that people ask me, when you worked with middle schoolers for as long as you did, and you came here, what do you notice? And I said, well, I just noticed that adults are bigger versions of middle schoolers. They have the same habits, the same behaviors. They just tend to be a little more, and with more baggage, tenderly, okay? So, you know, if I treat like a middle schooler, it's because really we all are middle schoolers at heart. So, Doug?
The famous Greek myth of Sisyphus tells of a man who is condemned to push a boulder up a mountain. When he reaches the peak, the stone rolls back down, and he has to start pushing it up the mountain all over again, every day for eternity. That's a little like the feeling of having left work at the end of an exhausting day and not being able to point to a single significant accomplishment. I got to know Jim Dixon, the general manager of a store in a large grocery chain, who felt very much like Sisyphus every day. Store 334 had the worst financial performance of 250 stores in the division. People didn't want to shop there, they didn't like to work there either. Every day Jim came to work, he would do what he called the head slap over the same old problems. Carts scattered in the parking lot, shelves not stocked, and a messy store. Not only had he hired people to do those things, he had hired people to hire people to do those things. Nothing in that store happened until Jim told somebody to do it. Now, the really sad part was that Jim had considered himself a good grocer and was considered a high potential manager when he was selected to be the GM a year earlier. Jim had been working 16 days straight, hadn't taken a vacation in over a year. He was pretty much carrying the store on his back. The vice president of human resources confided in me, Jim's either going to quit or we might have to let him go. Now, with all he had going on, you can imagine that he was delighted to be going to a workshop on top of everything else. It became obviously clear that Jim and his team didn't have a process for moving the store forward. So they started by getting really clear on the wildly important goal.
All right, so we're going to grow year-over-year income 10% through exceptional store conditions. Is that right?
Wait. One goal is better than the 9 that we're supposed to be working on, right?
Got that right.
We can do this?
Definitely. Yeah.
Next, they identified the vital few lead measures of store conditions. Now, measuring such a goal turned out, as it usually does, to be a little tricky. How do you measure something like store conditions in a grocery store with thousands of products? Well, they figured it out. Each department individually came up with the 5 most important things to measure for that department.
From the butcher block, fresh cuts in a clean display every day.
Fresh bread by 9 a.m.
Get the grocery shelf stocked by 5 a.m. No? Early bird special? It's good.
They decided to score themselves daily on a 1 to 10 scale. Then they created scoreboards to track the measures and progress towards the goal. It felt really good. The bet was that as store conditions improved, so would year-over-year revenue. They posted the scoreboards, and that night, the employees tore them down. We knew then that this was going to be tough. After the first of the year, they tried again. They put the scoreboards back up. After 2 weeks, however, the 5 departments were averaging a 13 on a 50-point scale that they've created themselves. The whirlwind, the day-to-day pressure sucked the department heads right back to where they had been.
Yolanda!
Sisyphus was alive and well. Despite the scoreboards, nothing had really changed in the store.
I'm just too busy to worry about that. I've got a large catering order, and that'll take all day. And I gotta do something about inventory because I'm about to run out, and I'm understaffed. There's just no time.
Despite all the work that had been done, there was no cadence of accountability. There was no regular weekly accounting to say, here's what I did last week, here's what I'm going to do this week to move that score. So in a last attempt, we pleaded with Jim to ask each member of his staff the question,
what is the one thing, just one thing, that you could do that would have the biggest impact on the scoreboard this week?
You want me to choose?
Yeah.
I guess I could get the back room cleaned out.
Okay. And how would that help things?
Well, it's kind of cluttered. I mean, I've got a lot of extra racks and a variety of things out on the floor. If I can get the back room cleaned up and move all those things off the floor, it'll look better.
Great. Just schedule some time and let me know if you need any help. Just that one thing, Yolanda. Okay, Ted, what is the one thing that you can do that would have the biggest impact on the scoreboard this week?
I have the big promotion this week, so I've been focused on the lobster special.
Okay, and that's great. You should be doing that because that's important. But how is that going to move the score?
Oh, well, I see where you're going. Well, Bobby's been here for 3 weeks, and he doesn't know how to set up in the morning yet, so I'll get him trained.
Okay, I appreciate that. It's perfect. Okay.
Was Jim micromanaging now? No. They were choosing. He had been micromanaging, and not because he wanted to be an overbearing or a controlling boss, but because he didn't know what else to do. So Jim's staff started meeting every week around the scoreboard, committing to each other to do just one thing to move the score and reporting on the prior week's commitments. It took about 10 weeks, but the scores went up. As the team started working in a rhythm and a cadence of accountability to each other, the revenue numbers began to climb and the store changed. Jim's team moved their total score from a 13 to a 38 on the 50-point scale. Store 334, the worst performing store out of 250 stores, went on to outproduce the rest of their zone in year-over-year sales. We were surprised at how quickly store sales responded to an improvement in store conditions. We were even more surprised at the change in morale when Jim's team started feeling like they were winning. This process not only changed store performance, but Jim's career. I was invited to a debrief meeting with the president of the division. I watched Jim report the progress of the store. He told them, things are going so well, I didn't even have to go in this morning. The president asked Jim, what has this change meant to you personally? Jim replied,
I kind of went into the whole thing feeling like I was going to carry the whole store on my back. And I was just going to ride it out until I got a transfer. And, well, now you can leave me there as long as you want.
In the end, it turned out that they were right about Jim. He really was a high potential manager. Deep down, everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to contribute to a goal that really matters. It is so disheartening to push and push day in and day out and wonder if you're making a difference. The people at Store 334 learned that disciplined execution can make all the difference. The difference between just pushing that rock up the hill forever or taking it over the top. The freedom is in the discipline.
Really important goal of Store 334.
To grow year-over-year income by 10% for exceptional store conditions.
Good. Grow revenue year over year with exceptional store conditions. Oh, by the way, it was 10%. Okay. Notice I left that out. That's a key piece. What did they choose as their lead measure? Store conditions. How clean the store was, how it looked, all those kind of things. Yolanda, the bakery manager, has a challenge. What was it? Help? Not enough time. So basically, yeah, getting things done by a certain time. So resources, time management. At first, there's one discipline, number 4, they do not perform. Which one is it? Yeah, lack of accountability. So we can come up with great goals and great leads, but if there's no accountability to doing it, it doesn't matter. We will get sucked into the whirlwind. Oh yeah, I'll get to that later. Yeah, I'll get to that later. So they had to put some accountability to it. I'm going to skip 5. Number 6, what is wrong with Ted's commitment, the lobster special? It had nothing to do with their lead measure of store conditions, did it? Which ultimately didn't have anything to do with the WIG. It was just part of the whirlwind. So let me give you an example of a commitment here at FamilyLife that is whirlwind. I could go in at, right now, I need to put my CMOs in. Let's say, I've done it, but let's just say I have to. My commitment, get my CMOs entered in Panorama by the end of the week. Well, how's that going to help the WIG? It doesn't. It's just a whirlwind activity. And so as a leader, we do keep ourselves accountable to that, because sometimes people will put really broad statements of commitments that really don't tell us anything. And so we have to get them specific, and that's what the manager did. He said, well, how does that help us? Oh, I see what you mean. It doesn't really help us. So he backtracked, came up with a better solution. So going back to number 5, why is Yolanda's, or what? First of all, what's the commitment Yolanda makes, the bakery manager? Clean the storeroom, which led to a better presentation out front. Why is that a good commitment? It contributes to the lead, right? So if it doesn't contribute to the lead, why is it a commitment? Yeah, that's something that you have to do at some point, but we would call that whirlwind. Okay, so what's outside the whirlwind? And how did Jim Dixon, the manager, handle correcting Ted's commitment? He redirected it and let him own it. And that's how we do it with on the commitment side of it. Even on the huddle side, when your teams are doing the huddle, talking about it, they own it. The leader doesn't own it. They give direction, but they don't own it. Okay, because they're not the one doing it. So just a quick review. That video, by the way, is just a way to help us see the whole thing together. And when you don't do certain aspects of it, it falls apart. So just a quick review. WIGs and leads. The wildly important goal is the enterprise WIG. Right now, that's to get 21,000 people to attend a Weekend to Remember by the end of December. Each team has their wildly important goal that should contribute to the overall WIG. They should all feed up somehow. And then each team has their lead measures, the activities or behaviors that they're going to do each day, each week, however it's drawn out, that gets us to the lag measure, the WIG, for their team. And if everybody theoretically does their part and they hit their goals in their teams, by the end of the year, we should reach the enterprise WIG. That's our bet. Did it work? Were we successful last year in hitting the WIG? We were not. We were 3,000 people off. Were we successful in increasing our attendance significantly? Yes. So it depends on how you define success. But we did see an increase by everybody pushing at the same time, all the same direction. And it does work. It's just, there's a lot of messiness that goes with it, as we've already talked about. Lastly, questions, thoughts? Pretty straightforward for most of you. It's just a process. Do this, do this, do this, you should get this result. That's all it is. However, you have to define it, and it has to be well defined. Otherwise, you can say, I'm going to do a bunch of things and never really accomplish anything. And that's what we tend to do in our day-to-day, because the whirlwind gets in the way. And how many times have you gone home and go, did I do anything today? You know? And the days that you really are productive are the days where you're really focused on reaching a certain goal, deadlines or whatever it might be. You know, we all have them. And so those deadlines, those goals, really help us define our activities for the day and for the week and for the month and for the year. Okay? And, you know, I know Mark is trying to come up with a strategy from an IT perspective on here are the goals, how does IT support those goals? Okay? Each of us is going to have that within our areas. You know, you're going to get a directive, get this done. Well, okay, now you got to come up with a plan to get it done. 40X is part of that plan. MPD world, this is what they do. They didn't know they were doing 40X. When I did MPD years ago, Doug did it many years ago, I didn't realize that, no. I didn't say you're old, I just said you did it many years ago. The process was you talk to people, ask them to partner, and ask them for other names, because eventually you run out of names. If you do those activities, you're going to raise your money. That's the bet. God sometimes intervenes and has other plans. And some people don't make it because of different reasons. But a lot of times it has to do with other reasons that are within their control. And that's where we're helping each other and holding each other accountable to get to that goal, whatever it is. Within our teams here, whether it's MPD, whether it's here in your team, whether it's enterprise-wide. And ultimately, what is this all about? Getting us focused to do what?
To win.
To win. And how do we know if we've won in our realm? Because we're not looking at revenue. Life change or life impact, depending on how you want to define it. How are people's lives interacting with Christ? That's the ultimate goal. So everything else we do here is about winning for Christ. Like how I turned that together. I've been doing this a while, so. All right, I promised I'd get you out of here earlier than later. And if you have no other questions, you are free to go. If you do have questions, seek me out. There are other coaches, by the way. Carlos Santiago and Tim Steele are two of the other coaches. I'm hoping to recruit another coach. If you're interested in coming on the coaching team, we have a great team. I currently get to lead that. And eventually I'd like to hand off the leadership mantle of the WIG coach to somebody else. So if you are interested, please seek me out. We can talk more about those details of how to do that. But it's not that time consuming. People think it's a lot of time. It does take some time. It does take some energy, but it is rewarding because you get to mix it up with a lot of different people in the building, and that's a lot of fun. And that's mostly positive. Okay, so appreciate you guys and your attentiveness. If you do need anything, please seek me out. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks. You're better than most of my students were. They'd walk out with it. So.